As an artist or as like a maker who has like multiple...
Back up. What's the difference? No, what's the difference?
I don't think there is a difference, but I think what I was about to say was someone who has like multiple facets of their practice. Like, I'm not just in the studio, I'm also in the classroom, I'm also tending to my land, I'm also teaching in my studio. Like, there are all these parts that feel connected, and I think one of my focuses for myself at McColl is to make sure that the studio does come first right now, and like this season of my life. So that's kind of what I was referring to.
So I'm so curious though.
Yeah.
What do you think, what's making versus artistry? Or maker versus an artist?
Yeah, I don't think they're mutually exclusive. I think as someone who has craft as like a central part of their practice, I think that I used to kind of subscribe to these two different dichotomies, and now I actually think that's really kind of harmful to contemporary craftspeople to think about them being separate. So yeah, I don't think there is a difference. I'm not sure why I made that distinction, but maybe that's something for me to think about.
I mean, it's a conversation that happens a lot here.
Yeah.
I think there is a level of comfort or discomfort with people calling themselves artists.
Yeah.
In some part, it becomes, have I made it to that space and that lane to consider myself that? Even if you're doing it full time, selling pieces, I've heard a lot of that hesitancy come across. So I always like to ask the question, and even for myself, right? Like, I think most people who come through here are on their own creative journey, trying to identify, am I a creative? Am I an artist? What is the distinction? I think I've always referred to myself as a craftswoman, right? So I also like meeting like-minded and then seeing from your perspective what that means to you.
Yeah, and I think whenever I said the word maker, maybe what I was referring to is someone who's also thinking about like knowledge making and knowledge sharing, and kind of zooming out from only thinking about myself in the silo of the studio. But yeah, that's something good to think about.
Okay, let's back it up then.
Okay.
So introduce yourself.
Okay.
And where are you from?
My name is Kimberly English, and I am an artist and educator born and raised in Georgia, now located in Canton, which is just outside of Asheville.
Okay.
And now I'm here in Charlotte at
Yeah.
the McColl Center.
Hey. Where did it start for you? Because I feel like as an artist or as a maker, it comes out young, right?
Yeah. I feel like this is something I talk about with my students a lot, like your first formative creative memory or like your first fabric memory. And my dad was a woodworker. And so I think from really early on, I saw what a devoted craftsperson looked like. He would get home from his really demanding job as a construction worker and would go piddle in his shop. And I remember like the frustration from my mom and like always kind of being like, wait, where is dad? And like, I think that made an impression on me young as like, he loves this thing. Like this is an obsession for him. And so I think I had that modeled for me really young. But then I think I met a long distance relative when I was about 12, when I was starting to kind of come into these ideas of what my individuality was and what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be. And I remember visiting this relative's home and seeing all of these like vintage crocheted Afghans. And like as this little girl who was like just learning about counterculture and Tumblr, like seeing all these things that this woman had made felt, I don't know, really empowering, but also like kind of punk to me. And I just remember that so well of thinking like, oh, I want to do that. I want to make these things for my home and for myself and for my loved ones. And so it really did start with just like teaching myself how to crochet, and then that kind of overlapped into teaching myself how to draw. And then in high school, I remember having a literature teacher and an art teacher that were just like, go, go, go. Like they were just like my personal cheerleaders. And I think that having people like that in my corner in a really small town in Georgia who like, I had my dad as this model of what a devoted, craftsperson looked like, but I didn't know what a career in the arts could look like. And so I think having these two people who from a very young age were like, this is something you should think about, really obviously made an impression on me.
So how do you think you were when you met that relative and saw?
I think I was definitely in middle school. Yeah, it was like my what was it? My great uncle's wife or something random. Like, I have no idea why.
Did you ever spend time with her later? It was just that one time.
Yeah, and honestly, now that I'm saying it, I don't even know that I met her. I think I just went to her house. But it was just that memory of walking into the house and seeing all of these, like, kind of like, I don't know, optical illusion, like vintage patterns that obviously, like, are still a part of, like, my aesthetic and, like, my artistic sensibility.
Yeah. Did that turn into mom and dad taking you to like random craft stores to stock up on things?
Oh my God, yeah, like Michael's and Joann's every weekend, rest in peace. Yeah, I would also like, I remember just like squirreling things away at school. Like when my art teachers would like get a new material, I would just like have to try it. I don't know, I was just like, it was all about like the material and like the ways in which I could transform the material from the very beginning, I think.
When you're creating, what does it feel like for you?
I think because a lot of what I do is really, it takes a really long time. It's kind of like an endurance sport. I think I have to kind of check in with my body first and make sure that I have the mental and physical bandwidth to do what I'm planning to do that day in the studio. Recently I was watching, I actually told Marlo and Taylor about this last week, but I was recently watching this interview with Diedrich Brockens, who's one of my favorite contemporary weavers, and he said this thing about his practice. He said, when you sit down at the loom, sometimes it feels like you're going on a road trip and you have to just mentally go somewhere else. And I love that. I think that there is kind of this oscillation in my practice between technical precision and having to really focus and lock in, which I love, and I love that feeling of competence, of having skills. But then there are moments where that kind of slips into this other like dissociative
meditative
state. Exactly. Yeah. But I think, this place where I can be in my studio doing the same practice and I can be really focused on the material and my body, but then after a certain point it becomes more about mental endurance and staying with the thing even when you're bored. So I think those are like the emotions that I'm thinking about a lot while I'm here, especially working on like pieces like this that are the same repetitive moment for hundreds of hours. And then that's my answer.
Well, so the reason it came to mind for me is you were talking about your dad. You were talking about how devoted he was.
Totally.
And sometimes quote unquote obsessed, right? And that is not uncommon for artists in a lot of ways, right? It's like the practice is a requirement for them to stabilize or to like, just get back to a comfortable frame of mind and energy. And then sometimes it's a release or it's just enjoyment or it's just exploration, right? I think a lot of people approach it in different ways.
Yeah.
And so I was just curious for you, you saw that being modeled with your dad.
Yeah.
And in a way you respected it, but it didn't seem like it was quite your style,
Totally.
right?
Yeah.
And even when we talked earlier, the conversation of oftentimes putting your practice last after all of your other obligations to everyone else, like your part comes a little later.
Right.
And so I was just curious, how you feel your practice as an adult and how you approach it, relates to what you saw modeled growing up.
Yeah, I feel like that's like a therapy session. No, I think all of that is totally true. And I think that I think what I really took from watching my dad in his practice whenever I was a child was like this mystery around like flow state. Like, what does that mean? How did you lose track of 5 hours? Like, I think I just remember asking that as a kid, and now I absolutely understand that. And I think that, those moments of like elation, but also moments of like why on earth am I doing this? Like they're not mutually exclusive. Like they're all kind of like bubbling up simultaneously. And it's kind of about, for me, I think it is about like sitting with myself and like letting those feelings come up and like accepting them and then moving through them. I think with this being such like a bodily and a time demanding practice, a lot of negative emotions come up too, you know, like a lot of stuff of like, why did this person say this to me? Or thinking about, you know, things that I should have done differently. And I think it gives you time with yourself to move through those things, to accept them, but also to kind of think about how the practice is connecting to that through like lenses of endurance, but also of like, you know, taking this material and recreating it. So yeah, that's a very long-winded way to respond again to that. But I think, yeah, that's something that I'm thinking about a lot. And I don't have like a perfect answer of like, this is how I feel, because I think it is kind of messy, you know?
Yeah, and it changes.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
The mood in which you come into the studio could be, you know, anything really. What's your vibe when you're in the studio? Is music playing? Is it often very reflective and you're just kind of in your thoughts and in your mind? Are you really focused? Like what's the...
Yeah, I think, again, there's like this pacing. I think some days, since I've been here especially, I'm thinking a lot about new work and what I want to make. And I am someone who is so easily distracted. You can ask anybody. And on those days, like I make sure that I have had my coffee and like had my breakfast, and I'll come in and it's kind of just like a brainstorming day, and I'll make 10 different lists and like then maybe do a mind map and like think about how conceptually things are relating. But I think that those days are more far and few between. Like I have those days, and those kind of like propel me through the more endurance-based days. But on the days where I'm like, you know, on the loom, or I'm spinning, or I'm working on days where I'm doing something that is more like, you know, where I'm going on a mental road trip. Like Rockin says, like I need something that is going to like help me get there. So sometimes it's a podcast. I love listening to podcasts. I've also been watching a lot of movies in the studio lately, which has felt really good. I think using fantasy or fiction as a way to like think about what's happening in the world right now has been a really effective tool to help me think about regenerative or renewed realities that could be posed through something creative like a movie or like a fiber piece.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into that a little bit. We talked about the journey to like through high school, right? That landed you into the space of knowing that you liked to create, that you were a maker yourself. And I think you said you started with crocheting, you started with like weaving techniques as well. When did you land into being a full-blown weaver? Like how did you land like this is my medium, this is where I like to be?
I actually didn't weave at all until I was in college. My family is super working class, very small town Georgia, and the impression that I got from them, maybe this was never said outright, but the impression that I got was, if you go to art school, it has to be a profitable degree. And so I went for advertising, LOL. And like my first, like all my foundations professors were like pulling me one by one, like, this is not. This is not for you. And I remember my drawing professor, again, kind of just like this like angel looking out for me. I did really well in my drawing class. And for a moment, I even thought maybe I'll go into illustration. And she really thoughtfully said to me, here's what I'm noticing about your practice. You're obsessed with rules, because I was just like, I remember being very comfortable in that classroom specifically, asking why a lot, which I think is the marker of a good educator, because I felt safe pushing back a little bit. But I was always asking her why the rubric was made the way it was, or like why we had to use certain colors. And she also said that I had this sensibility for pattern and for contrast. And she was like, I think weaving would scratch all those itches. Like, you need to explore this. And I took my first weaving class and had the most amazing instructor, and just, it felt like this thing that I was like, oh, I could spend the rest of my life doing this and not even scratch the surface. But it also felt like this, like, innate, like ancestral thing that I just understood. Yeah, and so I took all the weaving classes that my undergrad offered, and then went to my MFA where I focused on like sculpture more broadly, but through the lens of textiles.
Okay. So you consider yourself a fiber artist fully?
I do. Well, I think that's actually, I'm starting to shake that off a little bit because I think my practice is fiber-based. Like, I'm really interested in the structural and the material histories of fiber, whether that's domestic or manufactured. But while I'm here, I'm trying to, I don't know, like beef up my toolkit so that I can, one, support that practice, but also expand it. So I've been spending some time in the studio with Renee, making some frames for my two-dimensional work. But we're
I saw you getting some metalwork.
It was so fun. It was so empowering. And now I'm workshopping this idea for a really large 10-foot welded sculpture that I'm hoping to make before I leave. So yeah, thinking about myself as a weaver, as a textile artist, but also I think starting to walk that back a little bit and think about how other material histories can kind of graft their way into that.
I think that's the main reason you're here, right? Like this residency is really keen to allow space for exploration and play. I think that the fact that you are interested in checking out the other labs that exist, utilizing the specialists who are there, like Renee, I feel like it gives you a lot of space to maybe articulate things in your mind that physically you haven't been able to from just a lack of knowledge or current skill base.
Or like, I think another thing I'm thinking about is as my work gets more ambitious, I am collaborating and outsourcing more, which is amazing that I have those people to connect with and to work with. But I also think that having these skills in my toolkit will also help me be a better collaborator. Like when I'm working with my welding collaborator in the future, like
you know the language.
Exactly.
Yeah. Has that felt like a challenge at all sometimes, letting go of some of the pieces that you once did yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I love control.
Yeah.
And I've been like a totally autonomous maker for like since I graduated with my MFA. But I think my work conceptually and in practice right now is I'm really trying to interrogate this idea of self-sufficiency. Like I don't think that's sustainable for where I want to go in my practice. And I don't think that's sustainable like as a mindset anyway. So yeah, trying to think through ideas of self-sufficiency as it's related to, I don't know, the socio-political climate that we're in, but also through the way that I'm making to make the work richer and to make it a lot more fun by working with other people. So
it's putting me in mind of that old proverb or quote, like if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Exactly.
Yeah, and I think you said something about you're dreaming bigger, right? Your work is getting more ambitious. And so, yes, having help is fine. It allows you to be in more places at one time. But two, there's this element of collaboration, this like mind exploration with other people that allows you to kind of like pull ideas from and kind of like bounce and play off of. And I think there's something really expanding about that.
Yeah, I just did this recent collaboration with a local potter in Asheville. Her name's Melissa Weiss. She's amazing. But after Helene, after the storm, I kind of made this piece that was kind of acting as this like mourning shroud. And I knew that I wanted to have a bead element that was made from Western North Carolina clay, like from the banks after the storm. And of course, that's something I know nothing about. And so that was kind of like my first project of getting my feet wet with working with someone else. And it was such a positive experience that I, like the whole time I was like, why don't I do this all the time? Like, I know there's only so many hours in the day, but I think that really kind of set this foundation for me last year of like, this is something that, you know, I'm thinking about theoretically, but I also need to put into practice.
And there's also something really fun about finding people that you have some symmetry with, or just like connection with, and then like exploring with that.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like, working with your friends. Like, who doesn't want to do
that?
Yeah.
So for you, how do you come to the concepts that layer into your work? You just mentioned self-sufficiency kind of being one of the places you're exploring, but what else?
Yeah, I think that's something that I'm also, as I'm moving through my practice, I'm understanding better about myself. And I recently just read The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron, and I loved it. I know she gets like a lot of flack for being like really woo-woo, whatever, but it really taught me a lot about like trusting myself and also listening for things that are coming up repeatedly. And so that's kind of where it starts for me of like, okay, I've noticed this thing, this concept, this idea, this word several times this month or this year. I think this is something I need to pay more attention to. And I mean, I think some people could argue that like maybe that's, you know, the universe whispering to you, but I think it's also maybe more innate of like something that needs to come out that you're just listening for, that you're kind of looking for a conversation that's already happening. So yeah, a lot of times it starts like that with this idea that kind of keeps resurging. And then I do think of myself as a research-based artist. So I will, you know, and I think I use the term research loosely. Like sometimes that is in an archive, sometimes that's on YouTube Shorts. Like sometimes that's on talking to a friend who studied this thing in college. I don't know. I think that whenever I have that idea, it does kind of create this web where I'm reaching out and like connecting to other ideas. And then typically like I'll form a body of work around what I find from that. And I think I have recently realized in grad school and after grad school, I was making work that was really about these really large, abstract political and socio-political ideas that I didn't have any personal connection to, that I was interested in, but I didn't have any real like stake in. And I think 2 years ago, I had an exhibition that was deeply personal for me, and it really shifted the way that I think about my work. I felt like I could talk about it forever, which like the previous work I didn't feel like that. And I realized that I needed to kind of have this secondary filter in what I'm spending my time on that has to have this like personal narrative. So when these ideas come up of like things I'm noticing, I will think about them like broadly, politically, sociopolitically, globally, and then kind of run them through this other filter of like, okay, why am I interested in this? Like, what is my story in this? And I find that that's one, motivating for me to pursue, but also it makes it a lot easier to talk about. And it feels really regenerative to have, you know, this like macro, micro, like relationship.
See, and I think this is going to harken back to what we were talking about at the top, but for me, that is what makes it artistry, right? So you talked about this being a space that feels ancestral and intuitive for you. Like as soon as you started it, you recognized that your hands kind of knew what to do. You gravitated to the colors that feel right for you, but now you're also layering in like concepts and ideas that feel connected to you, and it's all being expressed in what you're putting out. And I think maybe that sometimes is what makes it the difference between just making something versus artistic expression. So talk about that series that was really personal for you. What was it called?
That's actually 3 of the works are out here in the hallway. And that show was a response to my estranged father suddenly dying. And my dad and I growing up, I know I mentioned that he was a crafts person. We were like opposites, like binary opposites growing up. Like we argued about everything, did not see eye to eye on anything. And he also, I think is important to include, he was a neo-Confederate. And growing up with a parent like that, I think shaped a lot of the ways I saw the world for the worse. And I think that I'm still actively unlearning a lot of that. But I think after his passing, I went to go help my mom kind of move out his things, his belongings, and seeing who he had become since our estrangement, and the books on his bookshelf, the things on his computer, things that just showed me that, oh, this is something I have to interrogate in myself. So the work was a lot about, the show was called Threshold, And it was all about our relationship, but also kind of painted against the backdrop of the American South. And I was thinking a lot about this liminal space between life and death, between acceptance and rejection, between right and wrong, between good and evil. I was thinking about all of those things through the lens of our relationship. And yeah, like I said, I just felt like there was this, it was necessary for me to make that work. I had to make that work. And I think that was the first time in my life I've ever felt that. And I think because it was so vulnerable and so hard to make it is what made me realize I think this is going to be a continuous theme in my work, is thinking about the ways in which I grew up, where I grew up, and then what I'm doing with that now. So yeah, a lot of that work drew from Southern and Southern Appalachian textile traditions, which I'm still working with now. And yeah, I'm still making work about the South and about ideologies of the South and patterns and habits of the people that I grew up around. And I think I want to be very clear in saying that like I'm not making this strictly from a critical point of view, that I think the South is not a lost cause. And I love being from the South, and I never want to leave the South. But I also think that when you love something, you have to defend it and you have to interrogate it. So I think that's kind of what I'm still doing with the work.
I mean, it seems like the dichotomy of everything that you were exploring and there being that gray area in it all, right? Like you might have had very opposing ideas from him, but like he also is very impactful to who you are today. It's that like that love /
Absolutely.
Yeah. Same with the South, right?
Yes, exactly. Like it really isn't black or white. And I think that like being a contemporary craftsperson who is a critical research-based maker, like I have to say that because I think that there is this trope of like discounting people who voted a certain way in the recent elections. And like I hope that my work speaks to those people, you know? So I'm trying to speak on those themes while also speaking to those themes.
Okay, so tell me a little bit more. And this is from someone, my background is also in advertising, right? So I am just entering into the world that is contemporary art in this way. And so when I think about research-based and I think about, you know, how that looks in different mediums, I'm still unclear on what that means as a fiber artist. Is the research and the history connected to the patterns that you use, to the materials that you're using? Are you actually creating different types of like shapes and patterns within the textiles as well? Like how does that show up in
all of that? Yes, but I think there are a few ways that I can answer that. I think one, looking at the history of like where these patterns came from, like they were brought over by European immigrants. Like it's this type of weaving, which is, it's called Overshot weaving. It's really credited with being this very distinctly American craft, which is not true. And it was brought over by these European immigrants who were also colonizers. And like, I think that history is also really important to talk about, that yes, this is a beautiful form of art and these people were brilliant and they had all these amazing drafts and they knew how to work the land, but also the history is not untethered from that broader narrative. And thinking again about how that's related to the South and those bigger ideologies. So yeah, for me, I'm looking through a lot of books. There are kind of like a few coverlit Bibles that I'm like looking through. I'm also, because I'm in Western North Carolina, I'm so lucky to be close to a couple of archives that I'm using a lot. One of them is the Southern Highland Craft Guild archive, and they have the original drafts, like the original weaving patterns that were, you know, painted in with plant dye from these women's backyard. They have all these original drawings from the turn of the 20th century settlement camps, which is when a lot of women from the north, from New England, came down to the mountains to civilize the Appalachian women, also to evangelize to them. Like, I think there's also a lot there that the reason that this craft persists is because of white saviorism, because of these women coming down and correcting the behavior and the lifestyle of the women who were in the mountains, who were in Appalachia. And yeah, that history is so messy because after those settlement camps came, these women started like selling their goods, which was amazing for them, especially in the Great Depression, because they were able to self-sustain their family. But there were also all of these really problematic narratives that surrounded those new commercial endeavors. One of them specifically was there was this this myth that got started that there was a native Appalachian race, that there was a native white race, and that these coverlets were made by these people. And of course, America has always been obsessed with nativism.
Yeah.
People went crazy and they wanted to buy these blankets, these home goods made by these native white people from the mountains when of course they weren't native white people. So yeah, I think there's so many things about this history that I find incredible, and there's so many things I find repellent about it. And I think because of that, a lot of my work is making, and it's, you know, referring to these patterns and remixing them, but it's also sometimes unraveling them or destroying them to make something new.
Wow.
And yeah, there's like, I will say my favorite part about this kind of research is the anecdotes that these weavers have written. Like there's this one, I know I'm probably rambling too long, but
yeah,
there's
I love
this one anecdote where this woman who, I believe she was actually in Connecticut. I do not think she was an Appalachian weaver, but it's the Ferris pattern. It's called Ferris, Ferris. And she had a bunch of cows and wanted to get water onto her property. There was a big mountain next to her property, and then there was water. There was like a river on the other side. So she wove all these blankets with this pattern that she wrote, and with that money, paid local men to dynamite the mountain so that the river would flow into her property. And I like just can't think of anything more like American than that. Like I'm just gonna blow up this mountain like for my cows that I'm gonna sell. I don't know. I think there's like something about hearing those anecdotes about where these patterns came from and the ways in which they were used that I think tells us a lot about the ways that we have and continue to project ourselves onto the land and how we think about identity and belonging to this place.
Yeah. Do you find, I mean, your story about the nativism or the native group that was supposed from from Appalachia, do you find like cultural integration into it? Because I mean, we're here in the South, so I can imagine there are a lot of different techniques that stem from Native Americans or Indigenous people, or from even maybe like Black Americans as well. Does that kind of cross in yet, or are you still exploring?
I mean, I think you can probably guess what I'm going to say next, but those makers weren't recorded. So we have no idea what their contributions were. Specifically enslaved people in the South. Plantations have archives where there are dozens of coverlets, someone's life work, and we have no idea who wove them, but we can assume that it was someone who was not the head of the household. There's a really great book it's called Overshot. I have it over there. Jessica Smith is one of the writers, and she talks about that, about kind of this like missing part of the narrative and how do we as contemporary makers reconcile with that. There's a lot of the history that is lost due to the weavers being marginalized or not seen as citizens, as real people. But a lot of it is also just because of the nature of it not being taken seriously as an art form or a craft form. And so, a lot of that history is anecdotal or doesn't exist at all.
You probably have to find your way into communities that have a little bit more of that oral knowledge. Yeah. And like there are so this type of weaving, overshot weaving or coverlet weaving, really was popping up all across America in like the 20th century and before. But like in New England and in like Philly specifically, there are different types of coverlets. So my research right now is kind of just focusing on like these Southern and Southern Appalachian narratives and those histories. But anywhere you go, you can find like different examples of what coverlets looked like. So you mentioned in some of the stories you were just telling, a lot of it connects back to the land, right? Like we forget that this art form extended from something that was a very functional use back then.
Totally.
But you haven't forgotten. Like, you have a homestead.
Yeah.
You got, what's your sheep's name?
Okay, I have 2 sheep.
Oh, you have 2.
Jabbo and Isabel.
Yes. So talk about
Yeah.
how this is connected to your lifestyle.
Yes, I have to start by saying that, like, again, thinking about interdependence and self-sufficiency, like, I could not be here without my partner who is taking care of all these animals. So shout out to Ryan. But I think my husband and I have always been interested in having animals and like having this relationship with the land that we're on. I think him maybe even more so than me at the very beginning of our relationship. He studied sustainability, and that's always been like a core tenet of who he is. And then I had the opportunity to teach at Virginia Commonwealth University last year. And I really have to credit that experience with shaping how I'm presently thinking about craft. I don't know, it's kind of hard to describe, but there was just like something in the air there about how the students primarily were thinking about sustainable practices in fiber. And like, for example, like some of them would not partake in chemical dyeing because why would we do that if we can do natural dyeing and it's not harmful? And like in some projects I would say, and here's where I'd recommend buying your yarn, and they would kind of look at me and say, we're gonna spin our yarn because we know how to spin our yarn. So just kind of this like reassessing autonomy in your practice, and also how being a maker is also being a consumer. I think I was really confronted with some of those ideas that I think I'd gotten a little lazy with. And yeah, I think like while I was there, I was thinking a lot about, you know, localized production and doing as much myself as I could. One, for the sustainable reasons, but also for the autonomy of what I'm doing. And yeah, I got home from Richmond and my husband and I were talking about all these ideas, and I was like, you know, it'd be crazy. What if we got some sheep and started grazing our land and used their wool for my practice? And the next day we had sheep in our car. So yeah, I think he's also very delusional, but I think that we want to, again, have this relationship to our land and these animals that we're, I hope, giving a really good home to. And I know that like right now, using fiber that I'm processing myself, I don't have the capacity to do all of that right now, but that is something that I'm thinking about in the future as a future goal. Yeah.
Do those pieces have like a special home for you and like a heart space, knowing that they come from?
Yeah, so I actually haven't woven anything with his wool. I'm actually spinning the little boy's first fleece. It's over here. And I think the first piece I make with it is going to be a coverlet for our home.
Yeah.
Which, you know, is going to be something functional. I'm going to dye it with walnuts that were grown in the pasture that they grazed. So I think that feels like, yes, art to me. It also feels like something that I don't want to leave my home. Like, I want to live with that.
It's nurturing.
Exactly.
It's like caretaking of them and of you guys, keeping it all together.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So what was the process shearing him for the first time?
So we actually...
Is that the right way to phrase it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. We hope to be doing all the shearing ourselves in the future, but we were just way too scared for the first one. And he's a baby.
Yes.
So we have like these farmer mentors. One thing I will say is the farming community in Western North Carolina is so collaborative and supportive. And we have this farmer couple that we keep calling our farmer mentors, because anything we need, they're just like super responsive. But he came out and sheared the sheep, and then we only sheared the boy because they're 2 different types of sheep, and so their wool is growing at different rates. We decided not to shear the girl, and we sheared Jabbo, and then started the processing. So skirting comes first, which is where you lay out all the fleece, pick out any vegetable matter, anything that looks like it's soiled or like couldn't be penetrated with water and soap. And then you wash for many days, many hours. And then after that, you dry it out. And then I have a connection to a local college that has kind of like a small fiber mill. So I was able to card the wool, pick the wool, and then card it so that all the fibers are aligned.
Okay.
And then you start spinning. So that's like before the spinning work happens. Okay. So that's what I'm doing here, kind of just like, I was telling Taylor this also, like as the beginning and the dessert to my studio day, I'll come spin a little while. But I really am I feel very connected to the spinning process right now. I think because maybe I'm a little bit homesick, but there are some days where I'll do this as my warm up and I will never get up. Like I'll just spin the whole 5 hours that I'm here. And I think again, like going back to that idea of like meditation or like embodiment of the material, I think that's something that just gets me grounded really fast. Whereas other parts of my practice feel like I have to kind of like, get myself excited about it. And that always makes me feel like content and ready. And yeah, it's been I'm glad that I've brought this here to work on because it's been just a really grounding experience.
And as someone who is still new to fiber arts, is spinning necessary with even processed materials?
Yes.
Okay, so you were already doing that part of it.
I really hadn't been spinning at all before the last year and a half. It really started with the sheep. Okay. I mean, I knew how to spin, but I didn't have that like material or personal connection to it. And actually, when we got the sheep, I had this idea of, okay, we'll shear it and we'll send it to a mill so they can clean and spin everything for us. And then as soon as I saw the wool, I was like, I have to do it. I have to do it by myself. And maybe that will be something that like
stays.
Yeah, or like I seek help with in the future. But it feels important. Also, learning from my mistakes of like there are some parts of the wool that aren't perfect, and I really like that, but I'm thinking about how to be more intentional with that for the future.
Yeah, but even that provides that hand element.
Yeah, I think it like makes me think about where it came from.
So you are currently based in Western North Carolina.
Yes.
What city did you say?
Canton.
Or town? Canton.
Yeah.
On a homestead with your partner.
I feel like homestead is very generous.
It's your homestead.
It's under an acre, so it's like it's not a lot of land, but we are in the mountains. We have animals. We have like a corral for the sheep. Yeah.
Oh wow. And so were you teaching? So you taught at VCU. You're here at UNC Charlotte as well. So when did teaching enter into your artistry? Practice?
Whenever I was in graduate school, I think that I knew that I wanted to teach. I TA'd for a sculpture class and then had my own sculpture and then a fibers class. And it really felt like, I remember thinking, it feels like my studio is my inhale and this is my exhale. Like, it's just this way to like keep myself in check with what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about, but also making sure that students feel empowered and like they have permission to do all these things that I felt like I didn't have permission to do. So yeah, I think early on I felt like teaching really called to me. And then I was like one of those people who was really delusional and I thought I would get a teaching job right out of my MFA, and that did not happen. So I've kind of just been like bouncing around, adjuncting a lot. But 2 years ago, I started this residency from my property. We were super lucky and we had this like almost a dilapidated structure on our house that was like the second home. It was like the mother-in-law suite. And so my husband and I renovated this and renovated that house and made it into, we're calling it Tabby, which is this experimental weaving residency. So during the summer months, we have an application process and people apply to come live on the property and use the looms, use the studio, and live in the mountains. Wow. And I think that came from maybe wanting to explore what teaching could look like outside of academia. Like, what could this look like without an institutional affiliation? And it's been really, really amazing. Wow. It feels like my dream job because it's, in my backyard, it's really focused. It's tailoring the weaving practice to one person. And people from all different like skill levels apply. So it can be someone who's never woven before. It can be someone who just needs time and space and resources. And then people can apply with like a specific project where I'll kind of like help them workshop it. Yeah, so I guess moving forward, I'm kind of interested in teaching in all capacities, whether that's academically affiliated or whether that's in my backyard. But
well,
yeah.
it's not too surprising considering earlier you talked about how instrumental teachers were for you,
Totally.
right? And there's this element of giving it back.
Exactly. Yeah, I think I was really lucky to have my public school angels who were just always looking out for me. And I think that I think about them a lot, and I want to be what they were for me to another student. Yeah.
And there's something really replenishing probably for your own practice. There's this symbiotic relationship that occurs with teacher and student.
Totally.
While, yes, you are teaching them something, but at the same time, the way that they view things, the new perspective finds its way into yours.
Yeah, I think even just simple things like asking why an artist is important. Like, why are we learning about this artist?
And you forget when you've
exactly.
been in it. Yeah.
Or it's like, well, I learned about this artist.
Right.
Like, are they actually important to this canon? I don't know. So yeah, I think just like it, again, like keeps me really honest, and it keeps like my research and my practice connected and connected to the next generation of makers as well.
How long are the stints at Tabby?
They're between 2 weeks, actually between 1 week and a month.
Okay. Nice.
Yeah, with 2 weeks as like the recommended, because it's really hard to weave. It's hard to learn how to weave in a week.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then really feel like you're making some progress
Exactly,
in it.
and have anything to show for it.
Yeah. So you're here at McColl Center. You're here through April, right? May.
Mid-May.
Ooh, we have you for a long time.
I know, I got a long time.
So what are you hoping to, I mean, I know you're also teaching at UNC Charlotte while you're here, but what are you looking forward to? Or what are you planning to work on while you're here?
Yeah, I feel like I have some question marks still, which is good. I'm like,
leave them.
Carving out space for those question marks. But I mentioned the project with Renee that I'm working on, and that will be for my first museum show in 2027. So we're going to work together. She's going to advise me on making a really large sculptural textile piece that's interactive, that is talking a lot about these ideas of interdependency and the South, like I was mentioning earlier. So that's kind of like my big ambitious project I'm working on while I'm here. I also have a really wonderful, scary loom. This is a Dobby loom, so it's computerized. And I'm hoping to like get really friendly with this loom while I'm here. I've worked on all types of like floor looms and like digital jacquard looms, and this is kind of like the middle range of that. It's a new loom to me, so yeah, that's on my list as well. And hopefully that'll be in the next few weeks. I'm kind of like finishing. I'm such a completionist, and like if I start something, I'm gonna finish it, even if I don't show it for a few years. And I have this one piece that I've been working on for over a year that I'm almost done with. But this is a piece that I started when I was living in Richmond that will be a part of an upcoming show at Winthrop University.
Okay. Yeah, it's really exciting. Yeah. Well, thank you for letting us steal a little bit of your time.
Yeah, that was great.